Hello, welcome again. It is continuation of our last lecture. Now, as we know that our brain has two hemispheres, a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere, and these two hemispheres are divided from each other by a longitudinal sulcus, or we call it a superior longitudinal sulcus, or a lateral or a longitudinal fissures. Now, this is division between your two hemispheres, a right hemisphere and left hemisphere. This is divided by longitudinal fissure. Now, if we talk about lobes of our brain has six functional lobes. Let's look at them. We have a frontal lobe here, a temporal lobe here, then behind or posterior to the central sulcus we have a parietal lobe, and all the way down we have occipital lobe here. Now, there is another lobe called as a parietal lobe. Now, if we look at here at the lateral fissure or at lateral sulcus, if we remove some brain from here and look deep into it, we'll find some more brain here. We call it inland lobe or island lobe. So this is actually parietal lobe. It's buried inside this central sulcus. Now, if we cut brain in half and look at brain from medial aspect, so we have cut brain in half and we are looking at our brain from medial aspect. So this is the medial aspect of our left cerebral hemisphere. So we can see our frontal lobe here. There is our parietal lobe, then there is occipital lobe, this is our cerebellum, this is our brainstem, and peeking out from this brainstem or behind this brainstem is our temporal lobe here. Now, let's talk about some important landmarks. Let's first talk about paracentral lobule. Now, if you can see here, this is actually our paracentral lobule. This point is actually paracentral lobule. This is what actually our pre and post central gyri are coming from lateral surface onto the medial aspect of brain. Then if we talk about parieto-occipital sulcus, now first we talked about paracentral lobule. Now let's talk about parieto-occipital sulcus. Now this is our actually parieto-occipital sulcus. It is a very deep groove and it is a clear landmark and clear demarcation between our parietal lobe and occipital lobe. This is parieto-occipital sulcus. Now let's talk about some more features. If we look at here, this is actually a band, a white band. We call it a corpus callosum. Actually, what is corpus callosum? Actually, literally corpus callosum is what our right hand knows that what our left hand is doing. This is all due to this corpus callosum. This is the white matter fiber tract. Actually, this connects the neurons of one hemisphere with the other hemisphere. So this is the corpus callosum. So then let's talk about more landmark. Let's talk about dancephalon. So if we talk about dancephalon, if you look at here, this lump here is actually a dancephalon. Let me mark it down. This lump here is actually our dancephalon, and what lies in dancephalon actually it is a gray matter. It is a gray matter that is very deep inside brain. It is very old. It's so old that it does not have any sort of layer around it, and it's not part of our actually cortical system. It's not part of our cortex. It is somewhat continuous with our brainstem. And here you can clearly see this is our cerebellum and this is our brainstem. So let's move on. So once again, let's look at our lobe once again. This is our frontal lobe here. There is the parietal lobe, and behind parieto-occipital sulcus, this is our occipital lobe, and our cerebellum and our brainstem is clearly visible. This is your corpus callosum. So let's move on. So now you know there is another lobe which is more functional rather than structural, in a sense that it actually surrounds our parietal lobe, our frontal lobe, our parietal lobe, and occipital lobe, temporal lobe. So let's look at the slide. So what have we done? What we have done here is that we have removed our actually dancephalon. We have removed our cerebellum from here. We have removed also our brainstem from here. So what we can find here is this gyrus, a cingulate gyrus. Now let me mark this gyrus. Actually, this is actually our cingulate gyrus. Our cingulate gyrus is just running at the top of our corpus callosum. On the top of corpus callosum, if we talk, this is our cingulate gyrus. Now this cingulate gyrus is actually separated from the rest of cortex by a sulcus called as a cingulate sulcus. Let me trace it down actually for you guys. This is actually our cingulate sulcus that is separating actually our cingulate gyrus from the rest of our cortex. This is actually our cingulate gyrus. Cingulate sulcus. This is our cingulate gyrus. Now let's trace down some more important landmarks. Now here is actually our collateral sulcus. Now let me trace it down also. There is our collateral sulcus. This is our actually a collateral sulcus going down here. This is collateral sulcus, and you guys know that on the anterior boundary of this collateral sulcus is our parahippocampal gyrus. So this anterior boundary of this collateral sulcus is actually your parahippocampal gyrus. Let me mark it down for you guys. This is actually our parahippocampal gyrus, and you guys know one amazing thing is that our parahippocampal gyrus and our cingulate gyrus, these both combine to form actually our limbic lobe. So what is our limbic lobe? Our limbic lobe is actually a combination of your parahippocampal gyrus and your cingulate gyrus. So, and you can look at here, it is a kind of making complete circle or a kind of half circle, and you guys know that in Latin we call half circle as limbus, so we call this lobe as a limbic lobe. So I think it's very much clear that about limbic lobe. Let's move on. Now let's talk about some functions. Let's talk about functions of these lobes. If we talk about frontal lobe, actually our frontal lobe is responsible for our executive functions. It is where your personality is, it is where your decision making takes place. Now if we talk about our parietal lobe, or our pre or postcentral gyri are actually concerned with your primary sensory cortex, or they have some association cortex in them. Now then if we talk about our temporal lobe, our temporal lobe is actually concerned with our auditory cortex. It has our primary auditory cortex. So it is where your hearing takes place, and all sort of vibrations coming into your ears, you cannot hear them until they reach your temporal primary auditory cortex. And the same is with our occipital lobe. Our occipital lobe has got our primary visual cortex. If you have completely working eyes, if you have fine eyes, but if someone comes and scoops out your occipital lobe, then you cannot see. So this is actually our occipital lobe. Then of course insula, and we are very much clear, we are very much knowing that insula is associated with pain, and it receives visceral sensory sensations from visceral organs or from hollow organs, for example our intestine, our heart, and our viscera. And if we talk about our limbic lobe is very much concerned with our emotions. Arousal meaning that you are awake, or you are aware of situation, or you are interested into your situation. And of course motivation, or your limbic system or your limbic lobe motivates you to get up and do your daily business and conduct your daily business. And of course it is also concerned with your memory. If we talk about memory, we talk about hippocampus. My writing is not good. Hippocampus, and we know that our hippocampus lies deep to our parahippocampal gyrus. So this lobe is actually concerned with these things. Now what I want you to take in from this lecture is that you must be able to tell that how many lobes are there, what are their names, and what are their boundaries, and what are their demarcations, what separates these lobes, and of course you must know the functions of these lobes. So basically this is actually a basic lecture. I am just trying to build up a foundation for neuroanatomy. When we're done with this, we'll dive deep into this. So thank you very much.